Man, it is clearly the dog days of sports offseason because now we are at the point where hyperbolic statements and clickbaity titles are at an all-time high. Everyone wants to get everyone's attention by saying stupid ass shit. So Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes caught some heat, caught some shots this past, I would say, week or so. With Lamar Jackson's quote, I think coming first, not from him, but from some boomer defensive coordinators, and they had some fun things to say about not Patrick Mahomes. They had some fun things to say about Lamar Jackson. One defensive coordinator saying if he has to pass to win the game, they ain't winning the game. Another defensive coordinator said he's so unique as an athlete and he's a really good football player, but I don't care if he wins the league MVP 12 times. I don't think he'll ever be a 1 as a quarterback. He'll be a 1 as a football player, but not as a quarterback. And again, I think a common pattern you're going to find in this video a lot is, first of all, blatant and obvious ignorancy to clear elite production. And also, you'll find that people just stuck behind in the most old-fashioned boomer thought process of a quarterback has to be a certain way. They have to be able to elitely dime up from the pocket, and you have to be Brady, and if you're not Brady, you're nothing else. It's trying to throw quarterbacks into a box that I haven't seen in so long. I just thought we were past this stage in football. And also another common theme you're going to see is just going all the way back to like the pre-draft, the combine pros and cons lists that like people have, NFL quarterbacks and players read, later on in their career when they're elite and they've clearly shown that these cons don't matter. But we're just like pulling them back now. Again, ignoring every single cone and thing that they've had to pass in their career. Guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson have clearly stepped on them and kicked them out the way and shown that they can be elite quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes definitely showing that, and Lamar Jackson showing that with a little bit more of a bumpy ride and a little bit more inconsistency. He's also been a league MVP, and he's also led the league in touchdowns. He's led the league in touchdowns. I don't care how bad of a passer you think Lamar Jackson is. If you have at one point led the league in touchdowns, passing touchdowns, not just total touchdowns, not football player touchdowns, quarterbackial touchdowns, throwing the ball in the end zone. That's the goal of a quarterback, right? On a drive, you go, I probably want to throw the ball into the end zone. He did that the most out of any player in the league. I understand that his running is a big part of Lamar Jackson's game. That's what makes Lamar Jackson, and that's what makes guys that are so outdated say he'll be a 1 as a football player, but not as a quarterback, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me. If you're playing the quarterback position and you're a 1 as the player of a quarterback, then I would say you're a 1 as a quarterback. I think it's silly. Like, does a point guard in the NBA have to average 16 assists to be good? Or is Damian Lillard not a good point guard? Is Steph Curry not a good point guard? Steph Curry averages about 5 assists. Is he a good basketball player but not a good point guard? No, he's a good ass fucking point guard. That's what he is. So it's trying to define a position that obviously clearly has been shown that definition isn't restrictive to what that position is. And again, so going back to the quote that I don't care if he wins the league MVP 12 times. Excuse me, sir. That's blatant hyperbolic. Just trash. You wouldn't, if you won the league MVP 12 years in a row, on year 11, you wouldn't be like, okay, I think he's improved a little bit as being a quarterback. Like, okay, man, whatever, man. Personally, I think 2 in a row after this year would really do it for me, but whatever. He's showing you that he doesn't care that Lamar Jackson has won 75 80% of the games he has ever played in, including a handful of games as a rookie. Patrick Mahomes has won 80% of the games he has played in. But he also had an entire year, to sit behind Alex Smith. And he has an offensive head coach like Andy Reid. And he had Tyreek Hill. And he has Travis Kelce. And he's had good stability around him. Lamar Jackson has also had good stability. And they've also built around Lamar Jackson. But they have never once gotten an elite receiver. If you get drafted and the entire team builds their system around you and you win 75% of the games, then maybe it works? ? Like, yeah, of course it does. Of course Lamar Jackson is elite. And again, Lamar Jackson has never had an offense to ever show that he could throw the football. He's never had a Tyreek Hill or Julio Jones in his prime or a Michael Thomas in his prime or a Devontae. He's never had that. He's never once had that. He's never once had like a really good receiver. You know, like his receivers are mid, bro. They're just mid. So get him somebody that can just change the game. I mean, honestly, could you imagine Tyreek Hill on the Ravens? Like, bro, Lamar Jackson would instantly be so elite, it would be insane. Especially in a sport, and especially a position like the quarterback, that has been shown to be heavily influenced by team success and how we rank these players. Matthew Stafford went to the Rams, won a Super Bowl, and people were really getting close to being like, he's a tier 1 quarterback. And that's okay. I'm fine if you say that, because I think winning should matter. And winning, again, that's not a weird thing to say. Winning, that's a pretty important thing. And combine winning with, I don't know, MVP level production, and you have Lamar Jackson. Obviously, he hasn't won the Super Bowl yet in his career. I understand. Has he had games where, yes, he had to throw and it didn't look fantastic? Yeah, that's a little bit of the Lamar Jackson experience. But so I don't think that if he has to pass to win the game, they ain't winning the game. That's a little truth to it. But to say they ain't winning the game is just ridiculous. He wins 80% of his games, 75% of his games, excuse me. That's fine if he has to pass, but it's these hypothetical scenarios where, sure, in a 30% sample size, if you get him into this point in the game, well, clearly 75% of the time, NFL teams can't fucking figure out how to make it a passing game. Clearly it's not working, dude. Clearly, this defensive coordinator that apparently knows everything about NFL defenses doesn't understand that I'm sure NFL defenses know just as well as you, dude. Hey, let's make this a passing game. Why doesn't it happen? Why does Lamar Jackson win 75% of those games? If you have the fucking master plan, do it. That's why when people say, oh, if you just make James Harden do this, just make sure he doesn't foul bait you. Well, do it, dude. I love all these hypothetical scenarios to try to downplay players as if teams wouldn't know these obvious hypothetical scenarios to try to put them in. It's weird. It's again, just being blatantly ignorant to obvious production and obvious ideas. So yeah, that's my rant on Lamar Jackson. And it's kind of the same thing with Patrick Mahomes to a lesser level, because obviously, Patrick Mahomes is more solidified in the league. And we get to the Athletic report, which I like the Athletic. They got good stuff, but they also have stuff that I think in the midst of the deadest point in, like I said, in sports media right now, I don't think the Athletic hated that, hey, we had one guy on our roster, which, again, they started the fucking Patrick Mahomes section with. It says a single contrarian voter prevented Mahomes from tying Rodgers at the top. That voter, a veteran defensive play caller, thinks that there were times last season when Mahomes failed to read defenses the way top-tier quarterbacks should. We love Mahomes because, and the quote says, we love Mahomes because of his unorthodox throws, not because of his natural pocket presence. This voter said, and when that disappears, that is when they lose games. I don't think that's a 1. I think that's a 2. Nothing against the guy. I love the kid, but take his first read away, and what does he do? He runs, he scrambles, and he plays street ball. Okay, so I'm just first questioning the integrity of the article because, again, it does not behoove me to think that The Athletic is either pushing or very satisfied that just one Not to discredit their entire article, and not to say that everyone at The Athletic is stupid. Just we had one guy say this, so let's talk about it. Let's stir up some stuff, right? I mean, that's how any amount of journalism or news publication or just idea publication is nowadays. That's how it is in politics. That's especially how it's going to be in sports. It's not just the grocery store magazines that have blatant lies on them, but they're like technically allowed to because they're not a news publication. They're like entertainment, and so it's like a different category, and so they can just say and lie about shit, right? It's like that, but instead of that, it's like every source, every news, every sports publication that we've ever known about, they just all do it now because technology. Like, isn't that great? Again, it's the blatant ignorance of elite production. We love Mahomes because of his unorthodox throws, not because of his not natural pocket presence. This voter said, and when that disappears, again, we're talking hypotheticals. I love the hypotheticals. And when, and if, and if so, it's all these made-up scenarios. And when that disappears, that is when they lose games. I don't think that's a 1. I think that is a 2. Nothing against the guy. I love the kid. Ooh, clearly you love the kid. But take his first read away, and what does he do? He runs, he scrambles, he plays street ball. Again, we are pushing... We are doing 2 things at once. We are making sure that we just ignore all the things that have happened in the past 4 years and just go back to his pre-draft notes and be like, that still does happen sometimes. So... Gotcha. You're not a number 1 guy, pal. But again, I'm not saying anything. I guess I'm not saying anything dramatically groundbreaking here. Sure, are parts of his game. If you're gonna say that Mahomes failed to read defenses the way a top tier quarterback should, I think that's not such a disaccurate statement. However, I think there's always a method to the madness, clearly, and I think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes do things a little bit differently, and I think it's more of just a non-cared attitude. But this is my problem with like comparing people like Patrick Mahomes to like people like Brett Favre. Patrick Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns and had 12 interceptions his first year, and he's never thrown over like 20. Patrick Mahomes has never thrown over 14 picks in a season. Over 13. If we're going to compare a guy like Patrick Mahomes to somebody like Brett Favre, and that's always the angle we've had with Patrick Mahomes, Brett Favre routinely threw over 13 picks. His second year, he threw 13. Then it was 24, 14, 13, 13, 16, 23, 23, 16, 15, 16, 21, 17, 29, 18, 15, 22, 7, 19. Guys, we're not talking about the same kind of player here. And if you're going to say that, sure, if this is like Andy Reid's system and all that, whatever we want to say, but it's just ignoring what is actually happening. However, if Mahomes snaps the ball and like throws it under his legs if he like almost like air dunks the ball to people, if the result is that Patrick Mahomes 4 years into his career has won 80% of 63 regular season games, and every single year in the postseason, he has never made it not to the conference championship, and he has also won a Super Bowl and also throw an MVP into that regular season where he's won 80% of 63 of his games. Throw all that in, and also don't even throw in the Brett Favre inefficiency, and don't even throw in the Brett Favre amount of interceptions. And that's not a tier 2. That's not a tier 1 guy. No one in the history of any sport could ever be considered a tier 1 if that's not tier 1. And again, it's ignoring elite production to try to say if you don't play exactly like Tom Brady, then you're not an elite quarterback. That's ridiculous. We are moving into such an era where a quarterback is not defined by how you play it, clearly. Because a guy like Kyler Murray, who his game is so unique and so different, just got paid bank. The same as a guy like Joe Burrow, the same as a guy like Patrick Mahomes, the same as a guy like Lamar Jackson. Like, they're all going to get their money. They are all different and elite, and they all win games. And they all are different. They all win games, and they all will succeed in the postseason, one point or the other. And they all win a lot of games. So let's just stop. Whether this is, and if you're going to say, hey, this is just them getting clickbait, then if you're hitting me with shitty takes for clickbait, I have all right to just assume that your journalistic integrity would be better not to just post random shit to just get clicks and and you know what? If it is, then they did their job, because I'm literally talking about the article. I clicked on the article. I'm probably going to show pictures of the article. It's going to show the link probably. Like, everyone's going to click on it. You did your job, man. But I have all right to react to it and say that this is a shitty ass article, or this is a shitty opinion in this article. I think it's actually a fine article. I like the tiers. I think I agree with mostly everything on the list. But of course, we have to have some hyperbolic statement in there. And it's just frustrating. So can we stop acting like Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes aren't kicking down the doors of traditional quarterbacks, and let's just move past Tom Bradyism. I love Tom Brady. I'm the only guy in Kansas City that likes Tom Brady, it feels like. But there's other ways to do it. Patrick Mahomes isn't 45. Patrick Mahomes is 26, 27? 27, I think he's 27. Patrick Mahomes is 27. He has enough time to figure the 45-year-old Patrick Mahomes game out. Right now, 27-year-old Patrick Mahomes has hosted 4 AFC championships in a city that had never done that in the history of their franchise, that was also in the first Super Bowl, so it's not like it's a new expansion team. A city that had been starving for any amount of playoff success came in, gave them regular season fun and hype, and nothing but Spurs-level amount of regular season and postseason dominance. Obviously not to the level of winning 5 championships, but just in this 4-year period, it has been nothing but Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' brilliance. And as a football fan, I can't be anything more than absolutely just beyond satisfied with being in a Super Bowl and people being like, is this the GOAT of football? Oh, I guess it's not. Yeah, that's a pretty good goddamn point to be in. And if that's not a tier 1 guy, if we're discussing whether he can be the GOAT and then he loses the Super Bowl and then the next year he comes back and, you know, makes another AFC championship game, like what are we talking about here? If this isn't a tier 1 guy, then no one is in the history of the game. And clearly we just don't have a clear definition of what a quarterback is, and it's because there's not one. It's because there's not. That's all I have to say. And Chiefs are going to win the AFC West next year. That's all I know.